Have any of you ever worn braces before? If you have, I feel for you. I really hope your experience was better than mine. I thought braces would make my life so much better, but oh boy, was I wrong. It all started because of how ugly my teeth were. They were short and had such big gaps between them. My friends sometimes made jokes about them, and it really hurt my feelings, but I tried to hide how I felt and laugh along with them. Because my parents worked away all the time, I lived with my grandparents in New Jersey, and they never thought there was any problem with my teeth. They said they'd grow as I got older, but honestly, I couldn't handle the teasing anymore. Eventually, I decided to take matters into my own hands. Every time my parents sent me pocket money, I'd save every cent. By my senior year of middle school, I'd finally saved up enough money, and so I went to the dentist and asked him for braces. My dentist said I need to wear them for about 2 years, and I thought that wouldn't be such a big deal, right? I mean, a few of my friends had braces too, and they still looked pretty, but unfortunately, that wasn't the case for me. My teeth were so messed up that normal braces just wouldn't cut it. My one friend had recently got these invisible braces, so I asked my dentist if I could get the same ones, but he said I needed something more hardcore. I ended up with black iron braces, and they made me look even uglier than before. How stupid I'd been to think that braces would magically make my teeth better. My friends thought it was hilarious and said I looked like I had train tracks inside my mouth. Everyone was laughing at me, and slowly I started to distance myself from them. Those days were some of the worst of my life, and all I wanted was to run away where no one would know me. So after I graduated from middle school, I persuaded my parents to let me go live with them in New York. I figured that I could start again with a clean slate at my new school. But seeing as I still had 2 years to go with the braces, I needed to make a plan. I didn't want to be the kid everyone laughed at anymore, so I decided to fake being mute so that I could hide my braces. On the first day at my new school, I'd prepared a letter that said I was mute due to oral surgery affecting my larynx, and that I was in the recovery phase, but it could take years to heal. I even faked my parents' signatures. Luckily for me, they were too busy to take me to school on my first day, so everything was going to plan. I thought someone might be at least a little suspicious, but no one asked me about it. And even the teachers gave me sympathy and said everything would be okay, and I'd still do well in my classes. I couldn't believe it. I knew I had to be careful though. So I separated myself from the other kids so they wouldn't try and talk to me. I didn't even eat lunch in the cafeteria because I was too afraid people would see how embarrassing I looked when I ate. I seriously had to open my mouth wide and chew super carefully, and afterwards there was always chunks of food stuck in my braces. But ugly teeth aside, I actually wasn't bad looking. In fact, thanks to the braces, I'd lost 10 kilograms, so my body was looking quite good. If I didn't open my mouth, I was kind of pretty, and because I kept myself separate from everyone, there was an air of mystery about me. After a week or so, a few guys started approaching me, trying to flirt with me, but I just ignored them. I knew if I opened my mouth it would be game over. I could see they thought I was a bit of a diva, but it was better than revealing my ugly secret. There was one guy called Jake that I secretly liked though, and I knew he liked me too, as he always tried to speak to me. But of course, I ignored him, and it made me feel so bad. Anytime he came up to me, I'd pretend to be busy or act like he was invisible. I wish I could just be honest with him, but then he wouldn't be into me. I mean, what guy wanted to date a girl with braces like mine? And as for the girls, they didn't like me one bit. One time, a girl in my class called Angela tried to ask me a question, and I just walked away from her. She shouted after me, asking me why I was being so rude, and said that no one had ever ignored her before. She was the most popular girl at school, and ever since that day, she started to treat me so badly. I heard her whispering to her friends that I should be at a school for disabled kids, and then one day she even came and told me that to my face. I was so upset. This school was just as bad as my old one. I didn't understand how people could be so mean. But that was nothing. It was about to get worse. One day, I woke up with a cold. I couldn't stop coughing and sneezing, but there was no way I could miss school as we had an exam that day. I decided to wear a face mask so no one would see my braces if I had to cough or sneeze. When I finished the exam, I was at my locker and suddenly the biggest sneeze came. I ended up sneezing 5 times in a row, and afterwards I said, "Jesus!" out loud as a reflex. Then I panicked. I was supposed to be mute and I'd just spoken. What if someone heard me? Well, someone did. I turned around and Angela was standing there with her friends. They were looking at me in shock, and Angela said, "I thought you couldn't speak, Then she walked towards me and reached out to pull my mask off. Suddenly, Jake appeared and stopped her. He told her to back off, and then he stood there protecting me. No one had done something so nice for me in years. That's when Jake and I started hanging out. We would go to the library, for walks in the forest, and even play piano together. I used a small notebook to write down whatever I wanted to say to him. And of course I just smiled, never laughed when I was with him, but then one day he leaned in to kiss me, and the worst thing ever happened. The thought of his lips touching the metal braces in my mouth made me disgusted with myself. So when his lips touched mine, I got such a fright I basically headbutted him. And when I realized what a stupid thing I was doing, blood was pouring out of his nose. Both of us frantically tried to stop the bleeding. I felt so ashamed of what I'd done that I had to try so hard not to cry in front of him, and he also blushed shyly. After that, it was hard to fully relax with him. Even though I liked him so much, I was so afraid that he'd catch a glimpse of my monster teeth and then break up with me. Little did I know what was just around the corner. One morning I was walking to my locker when I realized everyone was staring at me. I felt so self-conscious and didn't understand why they were all looking at me. And then I saw it. Plastered across my locker were tons of photos of me. And they were all of me from middle school. From when I hadn't worn braces to when I had it full of my mouth. They were the worst photos ever. I was ugly and fat in them, and I couldn't believe someone could be so cruel. As I stood there in shock, Angela walked up to me and said, "You're a liar, a monster pretending to be a mute little princess." Well, the truth is out now. Then she turned to everyone watching us and told them I really could speak. Turns out her cousin was in my old middle school. They'd been hanging out and she told Angela that I wasn't mute and hadn't had any surgery and that I just had ugly teeth. When she triumphantly walked past me, my anger flared up and for a moment I lost control. I rushed in and pushed her down the hallway. Then I jumped in to sit on her back and started pulling her hair. And then I saw blood, and that's the moment when I realized I'd taken it too far. Her front teeth had broken when she'd fallen. Everyone was taking photos. I was sitting on Angela's back, holding her hair, and my mouth was wide open, revealing hideous braces. Jake was also present in the crowd and looked at me in awe. I don't know if it was me or Angela who was more humiliating in this situation. After that, Angela had to wear big black iron braces just like me. The dentist said there were problems with her root canal, so she couldn't have implants. The only solution was wearing braces and hoping that her other teeth would move and fill the gaps. And my parents had to come to the school and apologize. And of course, I was suspended for what I did, not just for pushing Angela, but also the fact I forged my parents' signature. Jake never spoke to me again, which broke my heart. But what hurt even more was what happened a few weeks later. I found out Jake and Angela started dating. I couldn't believe it. I knew Angela was only doing it to get back at me, but it made me wonder, did that mean Jake didn't find girls with braces ugly? Why did I hide mine then? And there's one thing I still want to know. How do they kiss when Angela has a mouthful of braces?
My name's Maria, and I'm an introvert. Large groups of people, super loud parties, and being the center of attention, no thanks. I know I don't sound like the kind of girl who goes out and drinks a lot, yet I'm often drunk. Can you believe it? And turns out, drunk me is a complete nightmare. Cringe. It all started a few years ago when my best friend Kimberly had a pajama party for her birthday. I was nervous about it, as there were girls going that I didn't know. But I didn't want to let my bestie down, so I went along. We had dinner first, deep pan pizza, and cheese fries. Yum. Then suddenly my behavior turned weird. I couldn't stop laughing at every little thing. Then I ran around the house pretending to be an airplane and hung my head out of the window and started waving to complete strangers who passed by. I don't remember any of this though, but one of the girls videoed me and uploaded it to her social media page. The next day at school, everyone was pointing and laughing at me. Turns out the video had gone viral. I just couldn't figure out why I'd acted like that. It was so out of character for me. Then things got worse. Way worse. Once I'd finished my lunch in the school canteen, and 15 minutes later, as I walked out of there, I began to feel lightheaded. A girl who often gave me dirty looks passed me, and I slurred out, "What are you looking at?" Then I slapped her. This girl saw red, so she hit me back. A teacher had to pull us apart, and I was sent to the principal's office. He accused me of being drunk and summoned my mom. As you can imagine, my mom was furious. She grounded me for a whole month and cut off all my pocket money as she thought I'd use them to buy alcohol. I told her I hadn't drunk any alcohol, but she didn't believe me. I was so confused. I didn't understand why these weird things were happening. I just wanted a quiet life, so why did my personality suddenly change? Then it's my younger sister's birthday. About 10 minutes after eating a piece of fruitcake, I suddenly began to sweat and felt dizzy. I started to laugh for no reason, chatted out a load of nonsense, then fell off my seat. Everyone was staring at me with confusion. Finally, my mom realized that something was up with me. She took me to see loads of specialists, but they were all clueless. Then, finally, a specialist gave me a diagnosis. Turns out, I have a rare condition known as Auto-brewery syndrome. This causes the digestive system to automatically endogenously ferment. Then, when I consume sugars or starches, these produce alcohol, which make the body drunk. To curb such sudden bouts of drunkenness, I had to drastically cut down on sugary and starchy foods and take medication. As you can imagine, not being able to eat these types of foods was not fun at all. I like candy and chocolate, and I love pretzels, which also happen to be one of the most starch-filled foods out there. Talk about a bummer. Over 2 years of living with this condition, I've gotten used to it. I've discovered food substitutes, such as veggie fries and paleo bread. It can be a hassle in restaurants, as I hate being seen as the awkward customer with a long list of demands. But it was always not that bad, since I eventually knew how to control my sugar input. So I guess I learned how to be a normal teen and lead a fairly normal life. Well, at least until I ended up with a massive crush on a cute boy from my class called Scott. Being the shy girl I am, I can't imagine ever telling him how I felt. But I figured that my rare syndrome could help me do just that. So at Kimberly's birthday party, when Scott passed me a piece of gooey chocolate cake, I took it from him and ate it. I soon started to feel more confident. And before long, I dared to request songs and confidently sing in front of people. I chose to sing the Harry Styles song, Adore You, and I dedicated it to my amazing bestie, Kimberly. But while I sang it, I looked over at Scott. Later that night, Scott messaged me to ask if I was home yet. Then we talked more. But the next day, when Scott called out to me in the corridor, I only dared to shyly greet him with an awkward smile. Lack of yeast, I returned to my usual shy girl self. Then, during my English lit lesson, the teacher grouped me with Scott to perform a Shakespeare classic. He was playing Romeo and asked if I wanted to play Juliet. Oh, for a shy, quiet, and stuttering girl like me, performing in front of a whole class seemed unimaginable. But I didn't want anyone else from our group playing Juliet, so I plucked up the courage to say yes. So, before every rehearsal, and of course the official performance, I ate some candies. The performance was very successful, and afterward, Scott asked me to go to his friend's birthday party with him. I was super worried, but then I thought if I got a little drunk off food, everything would be fine. During the party, I was so nervous and longed for the confidence that I ate a bit too much candies and fruits, as I often did. I usually knew how much to eat so I could remain in control of my actions, but my nerves caused me to overdo it. The rest of the night was a blur. But Scott told me I was laughing like crazy, walking unsteadily, and I even wrapped my arms around his friend Freddie's neck and kissed him on the cheek, which caused Freddie's girlfriend to slap me in front of everyone. Even though Scott was mad at me, he still took me home. I tried slurring out an apology to him, but I was so drunk I ended up vomiting all over his lap. Talk about embarrassing. Still, being the sweet guy he is, he walked me inside and my mom took me straight to bed. Then she explained my condition to him. When we next spoke, he was really understanding about it and told me that he liked me just the way I am and that I didn't need to eat bad foods to feel more confident. I know I was wrong to abuse my condition. The drunk, confident version of me is a reckless mess, but I don't want to be her anymore. It's hard sometimes, especially as I find social events so awkward and uncomfortable. But I know I need to follow the doctor's instructions to manage my condition. Now I'm trying to build up my self-esteem instead of relying on false bursts of confidence that starchy foods give me. I know it isn't going to be easy, but now I realize that there are plenty of people out there that like me for me.
My name's Mary. I'm 20 years old, and I grew up with a very strict and religious mother. Every Sunday during church, I would say the same prayer to God. Please, God, help my mother to change into a different person to make my life easier and more comfortable. I never actually expected God to answer my prayers, but then something completely unexpected happened. Living with my mother wasn't easy for Dad and me. She was very strict and always had her ridiculously high standards. As a result of this, she gave us both a long list of daily house chores, and she could turn from a well-tempered woman into a monster at the slightest thing. Once, when I was dusting, I accidentally smashed one of her beloved cat ornaments, and she locked me in my bedroom for a full day. Another time, Dad forgot to take the trash out, so she emptied it into his briefcase. Mom also liked to have us live by her rules. Dinner was at 7 p.m. prompt. Bedtime was at 9:30 p.m. with no room for adjustment. And under no circumstances was I allowed to ever go out with a boy. I mean, come on, I'm a 20-year-old girl. I started dating this guy called Ben in secret. He's such a kind, caring guy, but I knew Mom wouldn't see it that way. So when I went round to his, I had to pretend to her that I was meeting friends. It was difficult having to lie to Mom, and it sucked that I couldn't stay over at his place. I was a grown woman, but Mom made me feel like I was still a little girl. As much as Dad and I loved Mom, her strict rules and temper were getting to us. One time, I overheard Mom yell at Dad, "You're a useless old fool, and I don't know why I married you." I walked into the kitchen to find Dad sighing deeply while staring blankly into space. Turns out, her outburst was all because he'd made toast with the bread Mom was saving for sandwiches. I felt so bad for him, so the next time I was at church, I said my usual prayer to God. I never expected Mom to actually alter her ways, but then everything changed 180 degrees after the terrible accident. My mom had a serious car crash in which the airbag didn't pop out in time. She bumped her head hard and ended up in a coma. Seeing Mom lying there unconscious and helpless was horrible. I prayed to God for her to wake up, even if it meant putting up with her strict rules. I actually believed that she was in this state because of me and my evil prayers. But then, a miracle happened. After 3 whole agonizing months, my mother woke up. Thank you, God, for answering my prayers again. Only my mother was looking at me like I was a complete stranger. Then she said to me, "Sweetie, do you go to my school? As you look familiar." Huh? What was going on? Then, when she saw her reflection in the mirror, she screamed and said, "How am I so old? This mirror's broken." The doctor ran some tests. Turns out, Mom lost all her memories that happened after she was 18. So, in my mother's mind, she's still an 18-year-old schoolgirl. Having a mother with the mindset of a teenage girl was, well, difficult. We had to decorate the spare room with a load of posters of bands from the 80s I've never heard of before. We had to teach her what a laptop was and show her how to use the cooker. Also, she never cleans anymore, and she even steals my clothes. My dad now works a lot, and I'm stuck playing mom to my mom. I once caught her trying to sneak out in my miniskirt and tie-dye t-shirt, and I folded my arms and scowled at her. "You're not going out dressed like that." She got so mad with me and sulked off to her room. OMG. I just realized I was becoming my mother. But she did look ridiculous. She's a 45-year-old woman, not some teenaged girl. But after the initial shock of my mother acting like a completely different person, I began to warm to her. She was funny, super curious, and most importantly of all, she didn't care about rules. Although one time my cell rang, this startled her so much that she grabbed it and threw it in the sink. Yeah, I wasn't overly impressed, but I guess it was kind of funny. She just didn't understand this world anymore. The one thing I did enjoy was having pamper evenings with her. She put scrunchies in my hair and helped me put my mask on. Then we chatted for hours about school, mean girls, and cute boys. Yeah, so, okay, talking about boys with my mom was weird, but it felt like this wasn't my mom at all, but someone new entirely. Then she asked me if I had a boyfriend, and I nodded without hesitation. Now I can comfortably talk about him without being afraid of her judgment. I told her, Ben is so cute, polite, mature, and very talented, and he's so good with technology. Oh, he sounds swell, she smiled. Could you invite him over to show me how to use that face what's-it thing on the computery thing? I replied, sure, Sure, Wendy. This was great. Now, not only could I be open about having a boyfriend, but now instead of feeling afraid of Mom, I was friends with her. Ben came over and helped Mom out with the computer and things. She still seemed completely puzzled by it all, but he seemed so chilled around her, even when she picked up the laptop and began to shake it in an attempt to get it to turn on. Yeah, the on button helps. I left them to it and went to get orange juice, but then I walked back into the room to see her brushing her fingers through his hair. When she saw me, she quickly pulled her hand away, and I was left wondering if I imagined it. But then later on, when we were watching a movie, she made a big deal of sitting next to him. Did my mom have a crush on my boyfriend? No, surely not. But then, after Ben left, Mom said, "That Ben is so handsome. Unlike that old man that also lives here, he has terrible dress sense and smells like cod liver oil tablets." This shocked me. Poor Dad. I guess it was a good thing he was working away so much, as I don't think he could have dealt with Mom being like this. Then, a few days later, Mom invited Ben over for dinner to thank him for helping her. At that point, I thought that maybe I was just too skeptical. My mother may be childish and impulsive, but she would never be her daughter's rival, right? While I was cooking in the kitchen, the two of them were laughing non-stop in the living room. They told each other endless stories, and it was annoying that my mother kept praising him and jumping up and down like a kid. I had to put on headphones and try to focus on cooking so I didn't have to hear those ridiculous sounds. But when I finished prepping dinner and took off my headphones, the house was strangely quiet. Where did they go? I walked out into the living room to the most horrifying sight. While Ben was trying to focus on the computer screen, my mother was sitting next to him on the sofa, her hands all over him. What the heck? Her hand was moving downwards and touching his thigh. "Stop!" I shouted. Startled, Ben stood up. That's when I noticed sweat drenched his shirt. He stuttered out, I didn't do anything. Your mother." And then he ran away. Needless to say, about my mom, she didn't look embarrassed at all. On the contrary, she turned to me and moaned out, "Thanks a lot, Mary. You scared off my date." I went crazy, threw a mirror at her, and told her to have a long, hard look at herself. She screamed back at me that Ben loved her because of her soul, not her age or appearance. And you know what? My mom and Ben are now texting each other. I don't know what's more shocking, that my mom's trying to steal my guy, or that she actually figured out how to text. Ben showed me some of the messages, and they're so bad, I actually thought I was going to vomit. One message said, "Please, Ben, I want to meet up in secret and kiss you and things. Mary never needs to know." Ben explained to me that he didn't know what to do. He says he loves me and never wants to risk losing me, but he didn't want to be rude to my mom as he knew she wasn't herself. Poor Ben having to deal with all this. From now on, I'm keeping Ben and my mom apart. So I've gone from having a secret boyfriend to having a mom who wants to kiss my boyfriend. My life is crazy. Please, God, I don't recognize my disciplined, strict mother anymore. And as challenging as it was to be around her, I miss her, and I just want her back.
Have you ever questioned if your teacher hates you? I wish I didn't have to, but yep, my teacher hated my guts, and she went out of her way to make it very clear. I'm Lori, by the way. I'm 15 years old, and I guess you could say I kind of stand out because of my looks. People say I'm kind of pretty. Anyway, this year I started high school, although I only joined halfway through the year because I was off sick for 6 months with glandular fever. Yep, I had the dreaded mono. I was so tired of lying in bed feeling sorry for myself, so when the doctor said I could finally go back to school, I was over the moon. Little did I know what was in store for me. On my first day, I had to show all my teachers my hospital certificate to explain why I'd missed so much of the year. When I gave it to Miss Atkin, my math teacher, she smiled and said, "Welcome. Nice to see you feeling so much better." I smiled back at her and said, "Thank you." And I was about to walk away when suddenly she said, "Excuse me, you're Lori Hannison?" Her face looked all weird, and when I told her, "Yep, that was me," Something inside her changed. She gave me a cold stare and told me to go to my seat immediately. I was confused a little bit about her attitude, but then I moved on from it. The most important thing was how I could catch up with my class. After missing 6 months of math, I was super behind and couldn't understand anything. My mom had to hire a tutor for me, and he was such a good teacher. Only after 3 months, I finally caught up with them. I had a notebook from our sessions with lots of notes inside, and whenever I couldn't remember something, I'd just look at it. Well, one day, I had it on my desk at school, and Miss Atkin caught me seeing my notes. She marched towards me, grabbed it, and slammed it down in front of me. She was so angry and got right up in my face and said, "Never, ever bring another teacher's notes to my class. Do you hear me?" As she said that, a little bit of spit flew out of her mouth and landed on my nose. I was horrified. Why was she so angry at me? It kinda scared me, and I thought maybe she was just angry because I wasn't as good at math as everyone else. After that, I didn't dare bring my notebook to class, but sometimes I still struggled, so I'd ask my friend who sat nearby to help me. Miss Atkin always caught me asking her and would put me in detention. One time I just sneezed too loud and she gave me detention. I mean, can you even believe? It annoyed me so much that I started to rebel. I'd often fall asleep in her class, and I seriously lost all motivation to do well. And that's not all. One day, I wore a new dress to class, and I swear I looked exactly like all the other girls at school. But Miss Atkin publicly embarrassed me by making me stand up in front of everyone, then said, "Girls and boys, Lori is a fine example of someone who pays more attention to what she wears than to studying. Don't be like Lori." I could feel myself blushing, and I wanted to cry. She was deliberately being mean to me, and I had no idea why. I was not that kind of girl. I normally loved studying, and I didn't care about clothes and shoes at all. I couldn't say anything, though, because if I spoke back to her, she'd give me a worse grade. What made it all even worse was that she was also the cheerleading coach, and she had her pack of cheerleaders following her around everywhere. One time I was standing in the hall talking with my friend Joe. We'd been best friends since we were like 3 years old, and we also live in the same street, so we'd grown up together. Joe always had my back. So we were standing there chatting when Miss Atkin and some of her fave students walked by. Suddenly I heard one of the girls say, "Oh look, surprise, surprise, it's Lori flirting with a boy again." Then one of the other girls said, "Seriously, she's such a fake. I mean, she's using her illness to get attention from boys. How pathetic." I couldn't believe it. Did they think I was deaf or something? They were the ones who were fake with their thick layers of makeup and all of their gossip and drama. I didn't really care that they were saying these things, but what really got to me was the way Miss Atkin laughed along with them. I actually saw her nod her head, so she agreed with them. I knew that wasn't okay. And Joe saw it too. He was so angry and grabbed my hand and said we had to report her to the principal. I stopped him though and said, "Just leave it. I am still the new girl here, and I don't want to cause any drama. And anyway, I have a plan." I smirked at him as I said this. So, Miss Atkin has this policy where if someone's phone rings in class, they have to answer it on speakerphone. And that policy includes her, too. So that day, I pretended to bump into her as she entered the class and watched as her phone dropped out of her hands. I quickly picked it up and apologized for being so clumsy, but at the same time, I unmuted it when she wasn't looking. Easy peasy. You see, I'd arranged for Joe to call her. This was going to be hilarious. Sure enough, 5 minutes later, her phone started ringing loudly. Her ringtone was Beyoncé's Single Ladies, and everyone burst out laughing. She freaked out and quickly grabbed her phone to cancel it. But Joe was persistent. He just kept calling, and everyone in class reminded her of the policy, so she had no choice but to answer it. Well, just wait for this. She answered, and suddenly Joe's voice filled the room. But he'd put on a funny accent to make himself sound older. "Honey, don't forget about our secret date at our favorite hotel tonight." Miss Atkin looked like she wanted to die. She said, "Who is this? I don't know you." Then Joe said, "Come on, baby, what's up? Is your husband there?" Miss Atkin was now visibly shaking and said, "You've got the wrong number." But Joe wouldn't stop. "Aw, you're so cute. I'll see you tonight, baby. Get ready for a fun night. Wink, wink." At that, Miss Atkin hung up and the whole class was just deathly silent. I had to bite my tongue to stop myself from laughing. Joe had really outdone himself. However, I hadn't exactly thought it all through, because a couple of days later, Joe and I were about to walk home when he got called into the principal's office. I went with him, but they wouldn't let me in. I could see Miss Atkin in the room along with the principal and Joe. She'd somehow found out that it was Joe who'd called her, and now the principal said that Joe would be expelled and that his parents would need to come in for a meeting the following day. Oh my God, this was all my fault. When he came out, I rushed over and started apologizing, but Joe said, "Don't worry, I did it, so I'll take the responsibility." I was beside myself with guilt. I just kept saying, "Joe, no, this is my fault. I'm the one who should be expelled." But Joe wouldn't even listen to me. Well, that evening I told my parents the whole story. I was crying as I told them, and obviously they were angry, but they were also supportive. The next day, Joe's parents came for their meeting. The principal was there, and the school board, and of course, Miss Atkin. Luckily, my parents arrived just in time to interrupt the meeting, and we burst into the room. We told them the truth, how I'd been so ill and had to get a tutor, and that's why I carried that notebook. Then how Miss Atkin had treated me so badly and been so rude to me the whole time. I told them the phone call incident had been my fault and that Joe had just wanted to help me. Suddenly, Miss Atkin stood up and pointed at me and said, "I knew it was you. You spoiled brat. You should be expelled." What happened next was crazy. My mom jumped up and said, "How dare you speak to my daughter like that? You hate her because she's my daughter. Get over it, Angela. It's been years." Well, Miss Atkin ran towards my mom and said, "You're a horrible woman, and so is your daughter. You deserve each other." She was about to grab my mom, but my dad jumped up and stopped her. I didn't understand what was happening. Everyone was so shocked. The principal looked so puzzled. Then he told us all to go home and calm down. When we got home, my mom sat me down and said, "If you're being mistreated, you need to tell us. Don't suffer it out alone, okay?" I told my mom I was fine, and that school was great, but then my dad interrupted and said, "You're fine? Don't lie to us. You were almost expelled." Then my mom said, "Honey, calm down. It's not her fault. You saw her teacher. She's a demon." Then my dad just laughed, and I was so confused. Then he said, "Oh yeah, Lori, we should have told you this already, but Miss Atkin was at school with us." Then they told me how the three of them had gone to high school together, and both my mom and Miss Atkin had a crush on my dad, so they became sworn enemies. They fought all the time, and Miss Atkin had been expelled from school because of my mom. Of course, my dad hadn't known all of that back then, and he'd fallen in love with my mom. Wow, now I understand the real reason Miss Atkin treated me like that. She was obviously still angry at my mom, and when she'd seen my name, she hadn't been able to control her anger anymore, and she'd just released it all on me. My mom said, "Lori, you look exactly like me in high school. Because I was pretty, so many people were jealous." Then she turned to my dad, smiled, and said, "I can see that Joe is quite similar to your dad. You should be careful." At that, Mom and I burst out laughing. My dad was just speechless. And guess what? It all worked out in the end. Miss Atkin got reassigned to another school, and Joe and I were only suspended from school for 2 weeks. Now we're closer than ever, and there's definitely some real chemistry between us. Finally, high school is getting good again, huh? When my boyfriend and I broke up before heading off to different universities, I never imagined that my love life would take a pretty dramatic turn, where I ended up being the third wheel in an affair. Let me backtrack a bit. I'm Juliana, a 19-year-old amateur marathon runner. I'd been a part of a running club for the past 5 years that met twice a week. And during that time, I became quite close to 2 of the runners there. They were both much older than me, but we got on well. Leo was a middle-aged bachelor, and Charlotte was a mom of 2 and had been married for more than 20 years. They both worked together in the same trading company, and I can't really explain it, but we all just clicked. We always ran together, but one morning, Leo didn't turn up. That was odd because he never missed a session. Anyway, Charlotte and I ran together. And that night, I received a message from Leo asking if I wanted to have dinner with him. I was a bit surprised, but this was Leo's first time inviting me to a private meal. But I still said yes, and we went to a restaurant downtown. At dinner, we got into some deep conversations, and at one point, I asked him, "Why have you stayed single till now?" He stopped a bit and replied to me, "It's hard to say, but I've just had a bad breakup a few years ago, and I wasn't ready to get into another relationship." Oh, that's why he decided to stay single, even though he's a pretty successful and attractive man. It was quite awkward after that. So I broke the silence by asking him why he hadn't come running that morning, and he just said something had come up at work. He was acting a little strange, but I didn't push it. Anyway, it was a nice dinner, and afterwards we shared a cab home, as we lived on the same street. Well, that's when something weird happened. Charlotte was waiting on his doorstep. Leo looked shocked to see her there and quickly ran out to check what was wrong. Charlotte hadn't seen me, so I wound the window down and happily waved to her, but to my complete surprise, she looked kinda annoyed. Then she just said they had work to do, and she hoped I got home safely. I didn't give it much thought, but in hindsight, what kind of work project needs to be done at 10 p.m.? Anyway, I didn't give it much thought. Surely there couldn't have been anything going on, right? I mean, Charlotte and Leo are colleagues and also close friends. And I'd met Charlotte's family. Sure, her husband was away for work a lot, but they loved each other. And they had kids together. I got home and chilled for a bit. Then about an hour later, I received a text from Leo asking if I'd like to join him for a midnight run. I immediately said yes. Well, to be honest, deep down, I totally had a bit of a crush on him. Even though I knew my parents would freak if they ever found out I was hanging out with the guy old enough to be my dad. It excites me, though. So I went for a run along the beach with him. And afterwards, we got some takeaway food and sat on the sand, listening to the waves and watching the stars. I guess we were both high off adrenaline, and also it was such a romantic setting with all the city lights reflected on the water. So we got into a really deep conversation about relationships and what we want from love. Then one thing led to another, and we started kissing. We ended up spending the whole night on the beach and even watched the sunrise. When I got home, I couldn't stop smiling. But then I saw I had 5 missed calls from Charlotte. I quickly called her back, thinking something must have happened. But when she picked up, she just said, "Where were you last night?" I told her I was on a run, and she said, "With who?" So I said, "With Leo? Why?" And she just said, "Oh, I was just curious. He wasn't answering my calls." Then we hung up. How strange, I thought. Anyway, that night, Leo asked me if I wanted to have dinner together again. And of course I said yes. I was dying to know if last night had just been a one-night makeout sesh, or if it could mean something more. When I saw him, I said to him, "Leo, sorry about last night. I got carried away, and I'm like half your age. I shouldn't have done that." Oh, I don't know what I was thinking. I expected him to say it was okay, and that he enjoyed it like I did. But instead, he said, "Yeah, let's just pretend that nothing happened." I felt so awkward after that, but I couldn't deny my feelings for him. After that, we got even closer, though. We spent more time together and spoke on the phone every night for hours. Then one night, Charlotte called me and said she'd had a fight with Leo, and that's why she'd gone to his place the week before. Now it all made sense. So that's why they hadn't been coming to the running club together. She said they still hadn't made up, and she needed someone to talk to. She sounded upset, but wouldn't tell me what the fight was about. Then she asked if we could meet up, although it was quite awkward. I had to tell her I was actually going to the theater with Leo. Leo and I both love going to the theater, and that night we had tickets to see Shakespeare in the Park. She asked why we hadn't invited her to join, and I said she could totally join us, but obviously it was too late to get tickets. Then she just hung up. Next days, I realized that Charlotte and Leo would only attend alternate running sessions so that they could avoid each other. I talked to both Leo and Charlotte about it, but they simply claimed that their work was getting stressful and hence they could only handle one training session a week. Then one Friday morning, I noticed Charlotte was in a seriously foul mood. Normally she was so upbeat, so I asked her what was up, and that's when she told me. She'd been having an affair with Leo for the past 3 years. I was shook. I mean, I guess I should have seen it coming, But I still couldn't hide my shock. I'd thought of her as such a role model, with this amazing family and a great job. And yet, here she was, nothing but a cheat. And with Leo, the guy I was seeing. Oh my God, what kind of mess had I got involved in? Charlotte begged me to keep it a secret, but I couldn't even speak. I was in complete denial. If she knew what Leo and I had been up to, and yet, why did it matter? She was the one having an affair, not me. I continued to see Leo, and one time he even invited me over to watch a movie at his place. And we made out again. It was amazing. But at the same time, I had Charlotte calling me every night for moral support, which made things really weird. For the next month or so, Leo and I kept meeting up, and I loved it. But I knew that if Charlotte found out, she'd kill me. It was such a dilemma. Then one night, she called me and said, "If you're my friend, Juliana, you'll stop seeing Leo. Please, I'm begging you." I couldn't believe it. How did she know? Sorry, Charlotte. How did you find out? She said it was a woman's sixth sense, and that she'd known ever since the night when I'd been in the cab with him. Plus, she said it was obvious that I'd had a crush on him for a while. All right, but why do you care if I'm still with Leo? You're married. He's single. He can do whatever he wants, I said to her. Then she said, "Please, for my sanity, please stop seeing him. I'm jealous, okay? It hurts to know you're together. Plus, he's not a good guy." Well, that did it. I wasn't going to break the sisters before misters rule, so I stopped seeing Leo. I couldn't hurt Charlotte like that, even though she was actually the one hurting her whole family by having this affair. Not seeing Leo made me miss him so much, but I told myself I had to keep my word to Charlotte. And yet, you won't believe what happened next. Charlotte started seeing Leo again. I was so angry. She'd asked me to stop seeing him and had even said he wasn't a good guy, all so she could have him to herself again? What kind of married woman does that? Honestly, I was raging. One morning after running, I marched over to her and said, "Do you not have any self-respect? What about your poor husband?" Charlotte went bright red and said, "I'm trying my best. I know you're right, and I should respect myself and my husband more. You know what? From now on, I will keep my distance from Leo, just like you. Trust me." Okay, so at least she had the decency to say that. And I hoped she could do exactly what she said. After that, I decided to take a break out of this complicated three-person relationship and tried to forget about Leo. I avoided him at the running club, and he avoided me too. Charlotte told me she'd spoken to him about dating me and how inappropriate it was for him to date someone as young as me. So maybe that's why the feeling was mutual. And he avoided me too. After all, it's better that way. He was way too old for me anyway. Plus, I was heading off to university. So it was all for the best. About Charlotte, after I confronted her, we actually became closer. And even now that I'm at university, she still calls me sometimes to ask how I'm doing. I asked her about Leo, and you won't believe it, but apparently Leo is now dating someone. Okay, I guess that's better for everyone. Although I sometimes wonder, if they break up, will he start up his affair with Charlotte again? Well, it's a story about my ebullient youth, when I got into so much trouble just because I fell in love with a middle-aged man. That whole period of my life was such a weird and messy time, right? But now I'm so glad I've met a nice guy my own age, and of course I never want to get involved in being a third wheel ever again.
Hi, my name's Kat, which is short for Catherine, but only my mom calls me that. My dad's Indian, and my mom's American. They met back when he was working over here. Then they fell in love, got married, and had me. Unfortunately, it didn't work out, and they split up before I was born. In India, when you marry, it's meant to be for life. But still, my parents got divorced, so the reason for that must have been really serious. So serious that till this day, I still don't know. Every time I asked about it, my parents would just ignore me and change the subject. Anyway, I've always lived with my mom, but my dad lives close by. Most kids from broken homes hate not having both parents around all the time, but this never bothered me. Don't get me wrong, I love my dad and all, but I guess I couldn't miss what I didn't know. Besides, I had far bigger problems to deal with. Okay, so don't laugh. Hear me out. I'm a tomboy, a fact which my mom hates. Yep, I detest wearing skirts and dresses, or anything girly and sparkly. Yuck! Give me basketball shorts and a baggy t-shirt any day. Also, I don't understand why some girls spend ages doing their makeup. Why would I want to make myself look like some living doll just to impress people? Please. I didn't get on that well with other girls. I guess I just had nothing in common with them. I didn't care about shopping and watching rom-coms. Nope. I'd much rather be kicking a ball around or playing video games. My best friend's a boy called Harry, and I've known him for forever. He's the one who taught me how to ride a skateboard. Talk about an adrenaline buzz. Now I pretty much go everywhere on one. I'm like a real-life Bart Simpson. For my whole life, my mom's given me disapproving looks. From the time when I only invited boys to my 6th birthday party, tore the arms off the dolls she gave me, and point-blank refused to move when she booked me in for ballet classes. I just wasn't a tea time with dolls and teddy bears kind of girl, and I didn't understand why she couldn't just buy me trucks and action figures instead. Then on top of that, Mom only dressed me up in skirts and dresses. I had no option but to wear them and endure school feeling so uncomfortable. I mean, have you tried playing soccer in a frilly dress? Talk about ridiculous. The other boys always had to wait for me to straighten out my skirt or try and find the hairpins that kept tumbling out of my hair. I mean, seriously, those things were so lame. By the time I reached 12, I was done wearing girly clothes just to please my mom, so I wore comfy, passed-down clothes that I got from my cousins beneath the hideous dresses and took them off en route to school. I was also so sick of my long, boring hair, so one day I snuck into the barber's after school and got an undercut. Then one evening, I was chilling on the couch when Mom pointed at my hair and in a horrified voice said, "Catherine, what have you done to yourself?" I hadn't realized the way I was lying meant some of my undercut was on show. I just shrugged and replied, "It's my hair, so I can do what I want with it." "Why would you want to make yourself look ugly?" she shouted. "It's not ugly. It's cool." My mom looked so shocked. She grounded me for a month, and during that time, she barely spoke to me. The quarreling didn't end there. Over the next few years, it seemed like every little thing I did annoyed her. From chewing on gum to refusing to wear a dress to my cousin's wedding, you name it, it made her mad. On loads of occasions, she shouted at me that she wished I was normal. I didn't get it. My friends and teachers didn't treat me like I was an alien. So why did my mom? One time, when I was about to leave and go and skateboard with Harry, she actually accused me of being a lesbian. I just rolled my eyes at this. For the record, I'm not. I've had crushes on boys before. Anyway, my dad was a lot more chilled than Mom. He's totally okay with me being a tomboy. One time, he even sent me a gift box with this really cool sports jersey and shorts in it. I stuck it in my wardrobe to hide it from Mom, but she still managed to find it and threw it all in the trash. As I questioned her why she did that, she replied, "If you want to live like a boy that much, you should move in with your dad." This made me so mad, so I packed a bag and went to Dad's place. He was bugged out by what my mom had done, but still, he told me I should forgive her and that I couldn't live here for good with him, as he couldn't be home all the time and take care of me like Mom did. Yeah, right. More like he knew Mom would never let this happen. It's like she hated me, but she still wanted me around so she had someone to moan at. I stayed with Dad for a few days until he had to go on a business trip. Then I had to reluctantly go home, though I was still kind of sulky at my mom. Then came the bombshell as I just arrived home. Mom sat me down and told me that she was dating some new guy called Max. Wow. I knew Mom and I weren't close, but I had no idea she'd been dating some new dude. "We're planning the wedding, and of course I want you to be my bridesmaid, but you'll have to wear a dress." What? She'd known the guy for 5 minutes, and now she was marrying him? "Yeah, whatever," I replied. My mom looked surprised. "That's all? You seriously have no problem with this?" I got up and walked upstairs to my room while saying, "Yeah, Mom, I'm okay with it. I support you doing what you like. Not like you, who always scolds me for my preferences. I could sense my mom being flustered without looking back. Ha! I'd won this round. So, Max moved in with his teenage daughter, Taylor, who's a year younger than me and goes to the same school. Talk about a Barbie. All she seems to be is a mass of shiny blonde hair and pink everything. Like, seriously, her rucksack, bed covers, curtains, even her phone's pink. But it's fine. Everyone has their own taste, so, whatever. Actually, it turns out that this new addition to the family wasn't as bad as I thought. Max is an okay guy who never looks down on me or comments on my tomboy ways. And about my mom, her focus towards me decreased. I was basically invisible to her, now she had Taylor around. You think I'd be mad jealous, huh? Actually, no. Not at all. I was glad of the peace. But then Mom started comparing me to that brat, saying how I should be more like her as we were both girls, but I acted like a little demon. What? Taylor was so pathetic. She screamed when she saw a roach in the kitchen and refused to get down from the worktop until it had been removed. Don't even get me started on how she acted like she couldn't reach the top shelves in the school's library, so other boys had to help her. Ugh, sickening. Then things got heated when Taylor stormed into my room and asked me to come down for dinner. Well, I probably was playing my music too loudly to hear her knocking on my door, but still, she wasn't welcome here. Then she took a quick look around my room. Okay, I'm not exactly the most organized person, but I know exactly where things are. I asked her, "What are you gawping at?" "Nothing," she bluffed. "Hey, why don't we go to the mall tomorrow? Let's go buy something cute. I need new clothes, and looks like you could use some help too." "I'm good, thanks. Crop tops aren't really my style. I'm not that much of a tryhard." I smirked at her. "Oh, please. You wish you were like me. Look at yourself. You have the sense of fashion of a 5-year-old boy. That's so childish. Who wears cargo pants anymore? Beats being a flamboyant ugly duckling who hides behind a zillion layers of pink glitter and foundation. Well, at least this ugly duckling will soon become a swan. But you're stuck being a nobody forever. No wonder Mom hates you." I stared at her with hatred. Who was she to judge me in my own house? I needed to teach this brat a lesson. I charged towards her and yanked back her hair. She yelled at me to stop. Then at that moment, my mother appeared and shouted at me, "Catherine, stop this at once! You need to grow up." "Me?" I shouted back. "She just told me you don't love me." "Well, she has a point. No one could love someone who acts like this. Look in the mirror. Taylor only said what we're all thinking. You're 17 already, for God's sakes. Grow up a little and give me a break." What was Mom saying? She was taking the side of some random girl that only just moved in over her actual daughter? Great. There's zero use fighting with these close-minded morons. I let go of Taylor and pushed her and my mom out of my room, screaming at them, "Fine! You two go and live happily ever after in your pink, fake, girly world." Then I slammed the door in their dumb faces. I was so done with them. I was so done with everything. Hey, it's me, Kat. I'm back to fill you in on the next part of my drama-filled life. So, me and my mom have never got on that well. She hates my tomboy ways and wishes I was a girl. So when her new fiancé Max moved in with his Barbie doll daughter Taylor, well, my mom instantly loved her more than me. During an argument, she even told me that she couldn't love someone like me and that I should grow up. How could my mom say that to my face? And especially in front of that little brat Taylor. I was so angry that I shut myself in my room that night and skipped dinner. But then, around 3 a.m., my stomach wouldn't quit growling, so I snuck down to the kitchen, and surprise, surprise, there was no leftover food for me at all. Great. Clearly, they didn't view me as a part of this family anymore, and wanted me to starve to death. I couldn't fall back asleep after that. So as soon as the sun came up, I called my best friend Harry up early. He answered the phone half asleep. "What?" I told him to rise and shine, as I needed saving from my nightmare of a home life. Oh, and I also told him to bring food. He muttered out "Yeah, fine." At least leaving early meant I wouldn't have to face Mom and Taylor. As soon as I got into Harry's car, he threw me a sandwich and asked what was wrong. And I told him how Taylor's basically Nightmare Barbie. He grinned at me. "Yeah? What'd she do? Steal all your food?" Trust him to make a joke out of my distress. Anyways, I told him everything that had happened while munching on the sandwich. He replied, "Come on, Kat. Like you're gonna let some 16-year-old get the better of you? How about I come over after school and suss out the situation? I'll fight off this kid for you." I jokingly replied, "Okay, I guess that might help keep the peace, as for some reason my mom seems to like you." So Harry came around, and naturally, my mom was all over him, telling him how handsome he is and demanding he stay for dinner. Talk about cringe! Then I had to listen to Mom telling him how she didn't understand me and how he should talk some sense into me. Hello? I was still in the room. Then Taylor arrived home all shiny-haired and girly. I swear my mom's face lit up just by seeing her. And worse still, so did Harry's. Ugh! Oh, Harry, have you met Taylor? Kat's sister. She goes to the same school as you guys. "Hi, Taylor. I've definitely seen you around, but I didn't know you were Kat's sister. She wouldn't tell me." He elbowed me while being all smiley to her. In that whiny voice of hers, Taylor replied, "Nice to meet you, Harry. Are you Kat's boyfriend?" We all burst out laughing. Then my mom chimed in, "Honey, I wish, but no. Your sister seems to be allergic to love. But you two would make a lovely couple." What on earth? They both laughed, and Harry replied, "I'd love to, but such a pretty girl like Taylor wouldn't lay an eye on me." Great. Thanks, Harry. As if Taylor isn't big-headed enough. I slyly kicked Harry's leg and gave him a dirty look. After dinner, me and Harry went to play video games in my room. As soon as I closed the door, he told me that Taylor seemed all right. Was he blinded by her Barbie looks or something? I was so mad that I slammed down my game's controller and told him he sucked. Ugh! Why did everyone treat me like such a joke? So, what if I didn't dress up girly? I still had feelings. They knew nothing about me. I actually had a huge crush on this boy at school called Garrett. He was on the boys' soccer team, and he was so talented. I totally swooned out loud when he scored 3 goals in a row. I usually didn't like jocks. As a member of the girls' soccer team, our teams often trained together, and I had to put up with them showing off to impress girls, while in reality, they couldn't actually play, and they skipped practice all the time to go partying. Garrett was different. He totally shined amongst those useless guys. I took the initiative to talk to him. Turns out, Garrett and I had loads in common. We instantly clicked and talked non-stop about soccer, skateboarding, and other stuff. Okay, so there was one problem. He seemed to be interested in the cheerleader type of girl. Once he even admitted his celebrity crush was Selena Gomez. Yeah, I know. She's as girly as you can get. That got me thinking a lot. I definitely wouldn't change who I was, but maybe a little makeover wouldn't hurt, right? I told Harry about it, and he just told me it was stupid, and he wasn't really supportive, which was strange for him, but whatever. So Harry worked evenings and weekends at the burger joint in the mall. I knew it was just so he could check out the girls going into the clothes shop opposite. I knew if I was going to win Garrett's heart, then I'd need to change my style, so I started visiting Harry more often at work. I'd sit there munching on free fries while watching the girly girls shop, so I could get the gist of the in trends and stuff. Then I stole my mom's lip gloss and some glittery eyeshadow and put it on for school. I even started wearing this plaid purple skirt Mom bought for me. I mean, at least it was sort of edgy, right? Though I had nothing other than my collection of oversized tees to go with it, but whatever. It was girly enough. OMG. Wearing a skirt is hard work. I couldn't run as fast or jump up to grab something off the top shelf. I also kept on forgetting I was wearing a skirt and sitting with my legs apart. Oops. My plan was working, though, as Garrett started sitting with me and Harry at lunch. Oh, and one time when I was struggling to run in a skirt, he passed me his jacket to tie around my waist. It gets even better. He invited me to his soccer team party. OMG! Talk about hitting the jackpot. This meant he liked me, right? That was it. I decided that the party will be my grand finale. I'd get a total makeover and confess my feelings to him while there. Finally, the day of the party arrived, so I put my awesome plan into action. Okay, so Mom's lousy makeup just wasn't cutting it, so I went into the drugstore and used up the testers. I even packed a pair of Mom's high heels with me. Now all I needed was a dress. Obviously, I wasn't going to buy one for keeps. No, I'd wear them for the party and return it the next day. All of my spying taught me one thing. Floral print was the in thing right now. So I bought this flowy floral dress in my size and went to the mall restrooms to try it on, so I had more privacy. I put the high heels on and zipped up the dress, but it seemed a little tight. Jeez, talk about tiring. I could barely reach the zipper on my back. After, 5 minutes of struggling, I was impatient and used up all of my force to pull it up. Done. Finally! But, uh-oh. My hair was stuck in between the zipper! Ugh, stupid long hair. I began to panic. I was completely stuck. Harry was on shift in the burger joint, so I sent him an emergency message. He sent me 5 crying with laughter emojis back, but he also said he'd be straight over. I couldn't expect him to come into the girls' restrooms, so I had to try and walk out into the mall foyer. My hair was stuck, so I had my face up to the sky, and every step was shaky due to the high heels. My 2 arms went straight out to navigate since I couldn't properly see the way. I must have looked like a zombie. People were whispering and laughing. It flustered me, and I tripped. The laughters were even louder now, and I couldn't even get up. I laid there in a weird position, feeling so helpless as anger and embarrassment filled me up. Thank God I heard a familiar voice. "Kat, are you okay?" Harry to the rescue. Finally! He shooed everyone away, took the heels off my feet, and helped me get up. Then he said, "Oh my God, Kat, what have you done? Seriously, why are you making a fool of yourself just because of some jock? You've lost yourself, Kat." He kept on grumbling as he tried to fix the zipper. Great, as if I wasn't already miserable enough. He was treating me just like my mom did. I was so angry, I pushed him out of my way as soon as he was done with the zipper, then stomped off. I was so mad. I washed all of the makeup off my face, changed back to my normal clothes, and went home. No more party or whatever. I was done. As soon as I reached home, I ran straight to my room and saw a brand new dress on my bed. What? I never wanted to see one of those evil things again. I grabbed the dress and stormed downstairs and started screaming at Mom. "I won't wear this. I hate it. I will never be like Little Miss Perfect Taylor, so please stop." I expected Mom to yell back, but to my surprise, she didn't. She told me that Harry had messaged her telling her what had happened. Oh my God, Harry, you snitch! I pulled out my phone and was about to dial the number to yell at him. Mom stopped me and continued. "He's worried about you, honey, so he asked me to help you out. I saw this dress in a shop the other day and bought it for you to wear to my wedding, but I think today is a special occasion too. Put it on, and go tell that boy you like him." Mom hugged me. Wow, talk about an emotional roller coaster. I was so touched and embarrassed about my thoughts and actions, so I agreed to let Mom help me curl my hair and apply my makeup, and I wore the dress she bought. I actually looked pretty cute, not gonna lie. She looked so happy and wished me good luck as I walked out of the house in ballet pumps, not high heels. Those things are evil. The party wasn't till later, so I texted Garrett and told him to meet me at the coffee shop around the corner. Everything was set. There's only one last step left. Hey, Kat here again. Are you ready for the next part of my story? If you haven't seen the first 2 parts, then what are you doing? Go and watch them right now. But if you have seen them, do you remember what happened to me? I'm a tomboy, a fact which my mom hates. Then her fiancé Max moved in with his girly daughter Taylor, and Mom clearly favored her over me. If this wasn't enough to deal with, I was then in an embarrassing situation at the mall while trying to be girly to impress this cute guy called Garrett who's into girly girls. So after the rescue of my best friend Harry and some help getting ready from my mom, I arranged to meet Garrett at the coffee shop so I could tell him exactly how I felt about him before his soccer team party. As I walked up the street to meet Garrett, I felt so happy. I'm sure it would be a surprise for him to see me dressed all girly, and he'd be into it. Then we'd kiss. Wow, that sounds great. I was the first one there, so I grabbed a hot chocolate and waited. Geez, that 5-minute wait felt like 5 years. Then he strolled through the door looking so casual but cute. He looked me up and down and then said, Kat, you do know the party later is just a casual hangout? I kept my cool as I replied, Oh, this old dress? It's just something I threw on in a hurry. He ordered a drink and we talked for a bit. I knew it was the only chance, either now or never, so I just came out with it. Look, Garrett, I think you're cool. Really cool, in fact. I have a crush on you. No, I think I like you a lot. He looked a little flustered, but surely this was totally normal, as he was just digesting my words, right? After a few minutes of silence, he gave me an awkward look as he said, Kat, I think you're great, but you're not my type. I just see you as one of the boys. I'm not his type? And he just sees me as a boy? I sat there completely heartbroken. Each word he said felt like a sharp knife stabbing into my little heart. I immediately stood up and asked him, What, you don't think I'm a girl? I'm in a dress, for goodness sake. If I'm not girly enough for you, then who is? He seemed a bit confused by my question, then reluctantly replied, I'm into gentle girls who need me to protect. Like Taylor, for example. She's your sister, right? Could you help me and Taylor become a couple? What? Not only did he have the cheek to publicly reject me, but now he was admitting to me that he liked that Barbie doll? I yelled at him. You have to be kidding me. Out of all the girls in the world, you like Taylor? Then I stormed out of there, relieved that I'd worn ballet pumps over evil high heels. I arrived home to the smell of freshly baked scones. Then I saw my mom and Taylor baking together in the kitchen. I wasn't in the mood for cooking with Barbie hour, so I slammed the door shut and stomped up to my room. My mom appeared and shouted up the stairs to me, Hey, honey, how was your date? Why are you back so early? Seriously, it was pretty clear from my door slamming that it hadn't gone well. Why did she feel the need to humiliate me in front of Taylor, of all people? Get real, Mom. I'm clearly upset. But then, what do you know? You only care about your shiny new daughter, Taylor. I ran into my room to change out of that damn dress I was wearing. Then I threw it down the stairs at her and yelled out, It's your dress, so take it back, and play dress-ups with her instead. My mom looked hurt, and at first, I felt a little bad. But then she shouted back, Why can't you just act like a normal girl and grow up? If you stopped being so selfish and made an effort with your appearance, your date might have gone better. Then Taylor continued, Don't be too much for Mom. She means well. If that boy doesn't like you, then that's your issue, not hers. What the hell? How dare this nobody blame me? And why was she calling my mom Mom? I didn't call Max Dad. Ugh, she was the worst person in the world. I hated her. I wanted her to go back to Barbie Land and never come back. I stormed out of the house and took the bus to my dad's house. I tried to hold back my emotions so that I wouldn't burst into tears, but honestly, I had nothing. Garrett had brutally rejected me in favor of Taylor. I was still in a mood with Harry, and Mom had made it clear I was an embarrassment to her. The worst part was Harry had been right. I had lost myself. I was not myself anymore. I showed up at Dad's, and as soon as he opened the door, I burst into tears and hugged him. I told him everything and begged him to let me live with him. Dad tried to analyze everything for me. After a while, I calmed down and realized that, okay, maybe I was a bit sassy with Mom. Then Dad said, Actually, Kat, there's something I wanted to tell you.
I really still love your mom and want you to help me get back with her." Whoa! I wasn't expecting that, but I was totally down for helping him. Goodbye to Barbie Taylor and hello to a proper family. Dad allowed me to stay for the night to let the tension between Mom and me calm down. His apartment was on the small side, so I had to sleep on the couch. But I didn't mind, as it meant I could stay up watching movies all night without Mom moaning at me that I needed my beauty sleep. I arrived home the next day to Mom and Max cleaning the house together. They were laughing and joking around and, yeah, okay, they looked really happy together. But Dad deserved this happiness more, right? I greeted both of them, but only Max replied. My mother ignored me like I was invisible. She must have still been mad at me. So all this tension wasn't a part of my get Dad back with Mom plan. So before I left for school, I walked up to Mom, said sorry, then kissed her on the cheek. Cheesy, but worth it. Then, as I was rummaging through my locker at school, I felt someone pat me on the shoulder. I turned around to see that it was Harry. "Kat, I'm sorry," he said. I turned around and continued to look through my locker. I'd forgiven him already, but I wanted to make him sweat a bit first. "Come on, Kat. I won't be able to study if I know you're mad at me, and my grades will suffer." I laughed and said, "Take me out for ice cream after school, and I may consider forgiving you." "I think I can manage that." He smiled at me. After school, we went to the ice cream shop nearby. My mood was so good, and I told Harry all about my plan to get Dad back with Mom. He wasn't so sure about it, but regardless of this, he promised to have my back. So, I had an ally, and the plan to heal my parents' feelings officially began. First, I invited Dad over for dinner. Mom wasn't overly impressed, but she couldn't say no. After all, he was my dad. During the meal, I went on about past stories, such as the time we all went on vacation together for my 7th birthday, and Dad lost his swimming trunks in the sea. My parents and Max just laughed, but I could make out the annoyed look on Taylor's face. After the meal, we watched TV together, and Taylor volunteered to make drinks for everyone. Then she brought out 5 glasses of orange juice. Dad took a large sip of his, then immediately spit it out all over his clothes and rushed to the toilet. Turns out she'd put mustard in my dad's glass, but neither Max nor Mom said anything about it. Damn little Taylor. Then one night, when I knew that Mom and Max were going on a private date, I deliberately hid Max's key. By the time they found them in the plant pot 2 hours later, they'd missed their time slot. Talk about success. Another day, my mom suggested going on a picnic, so I immediately called Harry and my dad and invited them to join. Then, while we were in the park waiting for Harry to show up, I saw Garrett walking over, hand in hand, with Taylor. Talk about awkward. Garrett couldn't even meet my eye, and I just wanted the ground to swallow me up. Mom asked them how long they'd been together. She said 2 weeks, so I did the math. OMG. That meant they got together on the day I confessed my feelings towards him. Whatever. I was so over Garrett. Although I have to admit, I was relieved when I saw Harry walking over with a basket full of my favorite foods. Taylor kept asking Garrett to feed her. Ew. It was so awkward. When Harry saw me staring at the couple with bullet-like eyes, he so quickly passed me a slice of chocolate cake. A while later, I asked Harry to help me take some photos. Then I quickly dragged Dad and Mom to take family pictures. I could see Dad was enjoying standing next to her, and I heard him tell her that she looked beautiful. Good one, Dad. Only Taylor wasn't having any of it. She immediately led Max over and pushed me out of the way so he could stand next to Mom. I stood next to Taylor, and before Harry counted to 3, I flipped Taylor's hair and deliberately stood over her. She glared at me. But I'm on top of the world, sucker! Anyway, I felt so good after that picnic, and I even thought that the day when Dad returned home would be soon. But a few days later during dinner, Mom and Max went on about what starters they wanted at their wedding. What? She still wanted to marry Max? So what about my dad? I immediately showed my annoyance, skipped my half-eaten meal, and stormed up to my room. I sat in my room, looked back at the picnic photos, and thought about my next plan. Then I heard a knock on the door. It was Max. Kat, I have something important to tell you, he said with a sad voice. Uh-oh, this couldn't be good, could it? Hey, Kat here. Again. I hope you're not bored of me yet. As if. Anyway, here's a recap of the last part of my story so far. In the last episode, I confessed my feelings to my crush, Garrett, but he rejected me because I was not girly enough for him. To make it even worse, he said he liked Taylor and wanted me to help them become a couple. I couldn't believe it. I was so furious that I argued with my mom. Then I came to my dad's house, and that's when my dad asked me to help him get back with Mom. Apparently, I jumped at the chance and immediately put my healing family relationships plan into action. But suddenly, Max said that he wanted to tell me something important. So, okay, he led me out to the garden. I followed him and kept wondering what he wanted to talk to me about. Did he know I wanted to split him and my mom up, and he was going to scold me for it? No way! As soon as we sat down, I asked him immediately, "What's the matter?" He just smiled. "I wanted to chat with you, so that we could understand each other better." I gave him a doubtful look. Why did he suddenly care about me? Jeez, this was so awkward. Then Max said, "Kat, I know that you want your parents to get back together." He hesitated a bit, then continued, "I don't dare to say that I'm better than your dad, but, we are all from broken families, and I just want to give you, your mom, and Taylor a happy home life. So I hope that you'll accept me and give me a chance." I didn't know how to reply to him. Okay, so I knew that Max truly loved my mom, as he always looked at her affectionately. But what about my dad? He was miserable without Mom, and if given the chance, he would definitely make us happy. As for Max, I was sure he'd have no trouble finding someone else. Okay, so I might have said Max was kind, but the reality was he wasn't right for Mom, but my dad was. I mean, they had history, and they had me. The wedding day loomed closer, and Mom and Max grew even soppier together. I wanted to cancel the wedding, but it seemed impossible. But then I realized something. Maybe I could somehow delay it? I had thought seriously for a few days. Then I came up with an idea. I would pretend to break my leg. If I couldn't come to the wedding, my mom had to postpone it, right? OMG! I was absolutely a genius. I immediately messaged Harry and told him about my bright idea for my Get Dad Back with Mom plan. Naturally, he replied I was bonkers, but he agreed to help me. He even told me how that could work, as his cousin was a doctor and he would definitely help us. Awesome! However, to make this plan work, first of all, I had to appear helpful so Mom wouldn't suss me out. So I kept asking her about the wedding preparations and said that she could tell me if she needed help. At first, she was quite surprised, but then she looked so happy and satisfied. Maybe Mom thought that her beloved daughter had finally grown up. That day, after school, I put the plan into action. Of course, with the help of Harry's doctor cousin. His cousin was really helpful. After bandaging my leg, he even gave me advice on how to walk, like I had really broken it. Then Harry took me home. When seeing me, my mom was totally terrified. She kept asking us what had happened. Harry lied that during a game of soccer, I'd tried to steal the ball and fallen awkwardly on my leg. I hadn't wanted to worry them, so he'd taken me to his cousin's clinic. I'd fractured it, and it would take me about 4 weeks to recover. His story was so real that I almost believed it myself. He was absolutely the best comrade in my life. After that, Mom spent more time taking care of me and wasn't as strict as before. Honestly, it was great. However, I really missed practice, and lying on my bed all day wasn't as fun as it sounded. My bedroom was on the 2nd floor, so my mom always brought me food so that I didn't need to go downstairs. One day, after lunch, I was so bored that I decided to go over to my desk to pick up my laptop and play some music. While I was standing and swinging to the rhythm, my mom came in with a plate of fruit in her hand. I was so surprised, but I immediately leaned on the desk and said, "Ay." She rushed to help me and asked what I was doing. In my most pitiful voice, I said, Mom, I wanted to practice walking for your big day, but my leg just hurts so much, and I'm not sure I'll be able to cope with the wedding. She stroked my hair and said, "It's okay, honey. Harry will come with you to the wedding and help you out." I leaned on her and sobbed. I can't do it. You see, Taylor will look like a princess, and I'll look like an Egyptian mummy. I wish there was some way the wedding could be delayed for a bit. My voice was smaller, and my eyes filled with false tears. Oh my God, forget soccer. I needed to join the drama club. The next day, she came into my room with Max, and she told me that they had some big news. "We can't contemplate getting married without you there, so we've decided to postpone the wedding until your leg is better." OMG. I'm a genius! But I tried not to look too excited. As soon as they left my room, I messaged Dad and told him the amazing news. Then I told him that I'd given him more time, but he needed to up his game. After that, Dad dropped in all the time, with the excuse that he wanted to check on me. But the problem was that Max was always around, so Dad couldn't have any private time with Mom. Cue the next step of my plan. I told my mom that I wanted to move down to Taylor's bedroom as her room was on the first floor, so I could walk around the house and get some fresh air. She agreed Taylor and I could switch rooms. But I begged again. No way! Taylor stole my crush, and now she's gonna live in my room? It's too much to even think about. Why don't you tell Max and Taylor to move out for a while? At least until my leg's better. Whenever I see Taylor running and dancing around, it bugs me out. She's so insensitive. Mom looked flustered, but she tried to keep calm and persuaded me to exchange the room with Taylor, just until my leg was better. At that point, Max came in. Turns out, he'd overheard our conversation. He turned to her and said, "Mary, I think Taylor and I should go and stay with my parents for a while. Then, when Kat's all healed up, we can come back." Mom's eyes filled up with tears, and I did feel a little bad, but when I saw him kiss her on the top of the head, I just felt annoyed. Mom belonged with Dad, not him. That night, while I was lying on the bed and texting Harry, Taylor stormed in looking furious. I took my eyes off the phone, smirked, and said, "Oh, it's nice of you to take time out of packing to visit me." She yelled at me, "Stop being so selfish and stop this! Because of you, the wedding has been delayed, and now you're kicking us out? Newsflash, this is my home too, Kat. The world doesn't just revolve around you." I stared at her. OMG. Why couldn't she just shut up and leave already? I told her, "You can stay here, but first, you need to break up with Garrett." She was furious and ran out without saying anything. Finally, Max and Taylor moved out. Plus, Harry told me that Taylor had broken up with Garrett. Oh my God, that feeble girl was so docile. Life was pretty awesome, but I couldn't wait to lose that itchy bandage. Dad popped by loads to take care of me. He even brought some cherry cakes and tulips, my mom's favorites for her. I felt like after all these storms, my family were finally reunited. Then, after a whole agonizing month, it was time for the bandage to go. Of course, I couldn't go to the clinic with my mom, so I came up with some excuse that I wanted to eat her clam soup when I got back. It worked, as she called Harry to go with me. When the bandage was removed, I cheered, and Harry laughed at me. "I hope it was worth it, Kat," he said. It totally was. I winked at him. I arrived home expecting Mom to greet me excitedly, but she wasn't in the kitchen. I heard voices coming from upstairs, so I stealthily put my ear against the door and heard Mom's voice. "We're over, Satya! How can you beg for me back after what you did?" Then I heard Dad reply, "I'm so sorry. It was all my fault. I should never have forced you to have an abortion just because the baby was a girl. But you know the pressures of having a son in India. Moreover, then there were your complications. You had one chance at having a baby. That's why I thought holding out for a son would be better. But that was the past. I've changed now. I love you and our daughter, and I just want to take care of you both. Oh, please. You only support Kat dressing like a boy because you want her to be a boy. Please, stop bothering us and leave us alone. What? Turns out, Dad had never truly supported me. He just wanted to have a son? He was the one who didn't want me to exist in the world. All along, he was the villain, not Mom. I felt disgusted. I slumped in front of the door and couldn't believe what I was hearing. It felt like my whole life had been one big stinking lie. Hey, Kat here. I don't want to alarm you or anything, but this is the final part of my story. I hope you'll enjoy it. And here's a reminder of what's happened in the last part. You remember, my dad told me surprising news that he wanted to get back with Mom, and he needed my help, don't you? Of course, I jumped at the chance and immediately put my healing family relationships plan into action. I knew I had to somehow delay Mom's wedding to Max, so I pretended to break my leg. My plan was totally working, as not only did they postpone the wedding, but Max and Taylor moved out to give me time to heal. I was very satisfied because everything was going as I planned, when suddenly, right on the day I had the bandage removed, I arrived home to hear the awful truth that shocked me to my core. My dad didn't want me to exist in the world because I was a girl. As soul-destroying as it was, I continued to listen to Mom and Dad's conversation. I heard Mom say, "I will never forgive you and never forget the moment you wanted me to get an abortion. Never! So don't think I will ever let you come back to this family." Dad replied, "Mary, please, I beg you." I'd heard enough, so I ran into my room. It all made sense now. No wonder Dad supported my tomboy style, because he desperately wanted a boy. As for my mom, she tried to make me dress up like a girl to get revenge on him. Feeling unwanted and unloved, I packed some clothes and quietly left the house. Normally, when I was upset, I would run to my dad's, but that option was out, obviously, so where could I go? Then I thought about Harry, so I called him to pick me up, and I just told him that I felt really bad right now and wanted to run away from home. Without knowing what the exact problem was, he showed up and drove us to the beach. He bought us loads of snacks, and we sat there in silence and watched the sun go down. Then Harry turned to me and said, "Are you ready to talk about it now?" I sighed, ate a handful of Cheetos, then told him everything. I still can't believe it. My dad, the person I love the most, didn't want me at all. Then my mom just used me to make him suffer. Talk about exhausting. It's best if I disappear from their lives. It's not like I'm wanted here anyway. Harry listened. He looked shocked, but he didn't interrupt me. Then he patted me on the back and pulled me in for a big hug. It was weird because we never usually showed each other that kind of affection, but it didn't feel strange at all. Instead, I felt safe next to him. At this vulnerable moment, he's the only person I still trusted. After a long silence, Harry turned to me and said, Who said you aren't wanted? I'm happy that you were born. I mean, meeting you is the best thing that ever happened to me. I've never met someone like you before. Kat, you're a brave and an amazing girl." My heart skipped a beat, and I felt my face turn bright red. I never knew that Harry thought of me like that. Then he touched my hand and said, "And there's something you should know. Oh my God. I didn't know why my heart was beating so fast. What's he gonna say? But then his phone rang. It was my mom. She'd been looking for me for hours and was worried sick. When Harry told her I was with him and I was fine, she sounded so relieved. I'm not a blubber. I cried and couldn't stop. I let Harry tell her where we were. When Mom arrived, she rushed over and hugged me. "Why didn't you tell me you were at the beach? I was so worried. Honey, don't you ever do that to me again." I hugged her and cried so loud, I didn't really know why I cried. Maybe because it was the first time we've ever properly hugged, and I could feel her love towards me. After we finally stopped crying, and trust me, it took a while, I told her that I knew the reason why she'd divorced Dad. She wiped off tears on my face and said, "Oh, sweetie, I kind of guessed you must have heard us fighting earlier. I'm so sorry about that. And now you know the reason why I was always so strict on you and wanted you to dress like a girl, to show your dad how amazing it is to have a daughter. But instead, you dress and behave like a boy, just like your father wanted. But Mom, you have to understand that I dress and behave like this because it's who I am. It's not because of Dad, not because of Harry, not because of anyone. If I change, it would mean that I don't live as my true self anymore. So, can you please let me be me, Mom?" My mom smiled at me and replied, "Oh, of course, sweetie. I'm so sorry. I didn't know. It was so selfish of me. I was so focused on going against your father that I forgot about your feelings. Can you ever forgive me?" "Of course, Mom." And then we cried again. Since then, things with my mom have improved a lot, but there was still some unfinished business I had to handle. Firstly, I had to swallow my pride and apologize to Max and Taylor. Harry came with me for moral support. We all sat down, and I apologized for being a childish brat. "You're a good man, Max, and my mom truly loves you. I would be grateful if you and Taylor would be a part of this family. Can you two please come back?" I said. He looked shocked for a moment, but then he smiled at me and said, "With pleasure. I miss your mom so much, it's driving me crazy." "Yep, he's been so miserable without her," Taylor added. "I'm sorry to you too, Taylor. Do you need some help with packing?" I asked her. Taylor smiled at me and replied, "Sure, that'd be great." So Mom and Max had a small ceremony in the end, although I still ended up wearing a dress, but hey, it was an exception for Mom's special day. It was a beautiful ceremony, and Mom looked amazing. Next, I had to make Taylor and Garrett get back together. I went to see Garrett at school and told him that it was all my fault Taylor broke up with him. He looked quite shocked, but at the same time, he was also happy to hear me say that. Well, that was such a relief. I felt much better now, knowing that I cleared up all misunderstandings between them. Then, when I was having lunch with Taylor in the cafeteria, he walked over with this enormous bouquet of roses, passed them to her, and asked her to be his girlfriend again. Taylor looked so surprised, but then she gave me a worried look. I smiled and said, "It's okay. You two are meant for each other." She was so happy she hugged me. I guess it was good to see her happy. And last but not least, I had to finish off the beach conversation with Harry. Obviously, I couldn't let that slide that easily. I've been thinking about it a lot, wondering what could it possibly be. Geez, why does it feel like my whole body is heating up every time I think back to that moment? I asked him to come to the beach, where I prepared a blanket on the sand with 2 cans of Coke and a huge pizza. His face lit up when he saw the setup. We had an awesome time and didn't stop laughing, even when Harry teased me by reminding me how I'd worn a dress to impress Garrett. I looked Harry in the eyes and said, "Thanks. Thanks for always having my back when I needed. And, meeting you is also the greatest thing that ever happened to me. You're the only one who accepts me for who I am." He touched my hand and said, "Kat, last time, I wanted to tell you something. I really like you, and I want us to be more than friends. Will you be my girlfriend?" Oh my God, this was crazy. Suddenly, I felt so shy, so I gently punched his arm and turned away, looking elsewhere so he couldn't see I was blushing like a tomato. Then I said, "Okay, fine, but it's just because I pity you." He laughed and hugged me. It felt so good being in his arms. Life was pretty great. Finally. But there was just one last issue to resolve. My dad. I went round to his place and we had a super long talk. He admitted he messed up and apologized for what he'd done in the past and for trying to get me to split Mom and Max up.
He told me that it didn't matter if I was a boy or not. He will always love me and is very proud of me. So, as you can see, it's been a whirlwind, but it all worked out in the end. I have the best boyfriend ever and an amazing family. I've been through a lot, but all I'm gonna say is never change who you are just to fit into the norm or to please anyone. Be yourself and the right people will love the real you. If they can't accept you for who you are, then they're just not worth it.